All right. Continuing to walk some more. I think people probably see these types of blotches on leaves a lot if they walk through the forest. And maybe you don't think much about these, but they're actually pretty cool in how they're made. These are essentially feeding marks by some sort of maybe a dipteran uh, fly, or perhaps a moth. Some beetles do this as well. And what it is it's called leaf mining. And so what happens is the immature stages, usually the larva, well, the egg actually can be inserted on top, be placed on top of the leaf, or it can be inserted in between the leaf layers, because a leaf has two epidermal layers, one on top and one on the bottom. And so when the larva hatches, it will feed in between these layers. And so this whitish color, which sort of turns brown later on, is just the empty space within those two layers. And the larva is just feeding on the tissue, the mesophyll, in between the leaf layers. There's actually a whole family of Diptera called the leaf mining flies, or Agromyzidae is the family that does this. There's also many families of Lepidoptera that do this. And it's, leaf mining is pretty interesting in several regards, in terms of the styles of mines that the larvae make. They can be different depending on the taxon. And here's another mantid hiding right there. They can be different depending on the style of, depending on the taxon that makes it. They can be different in terms of where the larva places its excrements or its frass. Some of the larvae, as they feed, they leave their excrement in a line, sort of maybe along the middle of the mine, or many of them actually, they pack their frass, they pack their excrements at one end of the mine. And this is because they try to hide the fact from predators and other insect parasitoids that there's something feeding within the leaf. Because if a parasitoid finds out, that larva will then be parasitized. It's a lot of, oh wow, there's a lot of scorpion flies here actually. It's the same taxon, I think. There's a male, and then nearby it is another male, just resting there. And this is another male. Maybe at some point we'll come across those big red ones. Another interesting thing I saw as I was passing by, there were some ants kind of walking along this bamboo here. If you look closely, ants typically, if they're not on the ground, they might be essentially tending to some other insects. And what I mean by that is they're sort of herding them. And they do so because they're feeding off of the excrements, which tend to be honeydew. And honeydew is produced by various hemipterans, because the hemipterans feed on the plants. And there's so much water in the plant that they have to get rid of it fairly quickly. And it's gotten rid of in the form of a sweet tasting kind of honeydew. If you look under this leaf, you'll see the ants there, and they're tending to some hemipteran. I'm not sure exactly what it is. To look closer, it might be some scale insects. Need a microscope to be sure. Having trouble focusing on this one. Sorry about that. See if I can focus on something else first. Where was it? There we go. See, they're just walking around in their little herd of scale insects, and they're at the same time they're protecting them. Okay, so the scale insects aren't bothered too much. They're not being eaten by the ants because they are providing a sweet meal for the ants. Very cool.